Welcome, everybody, to the Think Bigger podcast. This episode is going to be dedicated to questions that have been compiled, some over just the last few days, but really a lot of them are versions of each other that have been asked over the years or in the months from social media and in person at the various events that I go to. The questions are ones that people have asked me via DM, comment on Instagram, and a variety of other ways, YouTube comments and things like that. So I wanted to dedicate some time to answer some of them for everyone to be able to hear because many of them are kind of repeats of each other to some degree. So let's address that. Let's get to some of these questions that people have asked. So one of the biggest ones is, what is the big deal about grammar? Okay. So a lot of the regulars are laughing right now. A lot of them are because of in the live streams on Instagram and things like that. It's become a very regular and normal thing where people are pretty much consistently making some kind of an effort to type out more proper, more properly because grammar. All right, so why does grammar matter? I mean, there's a reason that grammar exists. I didn't invent it. I am a student of it, just like we all were or are. All of us went to elementary school. All of us learned what a comma is and what a period is. We know how to capitalize a proper noun. That's all, elementary school stuff. And the difference is that when we're on the internet because of text messaging and commenting and I don't know, Snapchatting and all these different things, people have somehow allowed life and the internet to make them believe that they are too busy to type out a word. That there's acronyms and slang and things like that have taken the place of regular English. And I get it, right? But the problem is that you have someone who will type out a sentence that looks like they either dropped out of school in seventh grade or English isn't their first language. They'll type it out where you have to sit there and stare at it for a second to understand what it says. And those same type of people are the first people to get mad when nobody takes them seriously. If you send an email to a company, a sponsorship proposal, a tech question, a warranty complaint, and you have to explain something specific or technical, and you can't even type out a proper sentence, do you understand how that's gonna not really put you in a position to be taken seriously? If somebody can't read what you type, why would they think that you're someone that should be taken seriously? Now, there's a lot of people getting really upset about this kind of stuff, and there are one or two people over the years that have refused to look at it objectively, and they get very mad at me. I'm not judging you. Okay, what I am telling you is though the reality. The reality is that you can email or send a resume or a job application and you will never get the job solely because the grammar that you think or say doesn't matter or is quote unquote not that big of a deal. That alone will prevent your application from ever getting to a point where you will be taken seriously. The reason why is because they don't see you, they can't get to know you, they can't see the work ethic that you may have or the personality that you have. You are presenting yourself in a written, visual, digital form. And if you do that and you look like you're in the seventh grade, guess where that application or email or sponsorship proposal or anything, where does it go? It goes to the bottom of the list, figuratively and literally. So, why does grammar matter? Grammar matters because a company reading your Facebook post, a company or person reading your Instagram caption or post or comments, That is the only real indication they have of who you are in that moment. And for you to argue and say, who cares? It doesn't matter. You can argue that with me or with yourself until you're blue in the face. But that's not that's not going to get you anywhere, because the person or company that matter, they they're not the ones you're having the conversation with, because you'll never have the chance to show them that your personality matters. That's like the one real argument I've heard from a couple of people over the last few years, is that who cares about education, who cares about grammar? It matters who you are. That is the most millennial ass perspective I've ever heard in my life. Okay. Of course, figuratively and philosophically, of course, who you are matters more than if you can spell a word. Of course, it does. But that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about if you're a good person or not. We're not judging you as a person. I'm certainly not. What I'm explaining to you is the reality of the world that you live in. If you don't want to accept it, that's on you. But in the reality of it is, if you can't crank out a proper English sentence, you're not going to be taken seriously. That's it. You don't have to like it, you don't have to agree with it, but that's really the reality of it. I'm not judging you. I'm just telling you that in a professional setting, you have ruined yourself, and you will never have the opportunity to explain to the person who put you at the bottom of the list or in the trash that I'm a good person, and my grammar doesn't matter. That's for you to deal with internally. But the world around you, you know, I didn't create those circumstances and I didn't create grammar. But I'm just giving you the reality of it. And 99.7% of you have learned to understand that this is not about judging people. This is not about belittling someone. This is just simply an objective explanation of reality. So that's one of the biggest ones right there. So let's go with that. All right. That's there's that. All right. What inspired you to make the podcast? Well, the podcast, as a branch of the Think Bigger project, the podcast is simply a method of reaching more people, stimulating intelligent thought, and promoting growth. The Think Bigger project is not a car brand. It's not a movement based in the automotive world. It's bigger than that. It's not about cars. It's bigger than that. It's about how you think, how you behave, how you conduct business, how you treat your fellow human beings. So the Think Bigger project website, merchandise, logos, designs, mottos, layout, YouTube channel, theme, colorway, all of that is a mature, intelligent feel. It is a movement and a brand and a company based on forward progression and thinking. And the podcast is subject matter that we all have to think about. Some of us don't have anyone to talk about these types of things with or to. So we think them in our minds all day long or every once in a while. And, this is a place where we stimulate conversation. And, people will send me humongous messages, man, long paragraph after paragraph, just dumping out thoughts that they've had in their head because of subjects brought up in the podcast, in the YouTube channel, videos, or something stimulated by one of the designs, represent your mindset, establish daily, passion, drive, focus, the thinkers movement, thinkers worldwide. I mean, sometimes just the words or the design or the shape has caused people to really, really think. So the podcast was created to stimulate conversation, to address subjects. There are more and more guests lined up that I'm going to have a conversation with about various things. And so the podcast is here for you guys to think, to listen to as you commute, as you wrench in the garage, as you're at the house cleaning, and and that's what it's about. It's about thinking and changing the way you think for the better. So that's why I created the podcast. Um, all right. Do you like nachos? It's a fantastic question. I mean, I haven't had nachos in a fair amount of time, but yes, the basic premise of nachos is it's good. It's good. They're good. All right. How do you go about becoming attractive to companies for their support? Is it good to be overconfident in these situations? Huh. How do you go about making yourself attractive to companies? I mean, when you talk about being attractive to a company, what can you do for them? That is really what this is asking. It's a business transaction. Companies to sponsor you. How do I become an attractive car or person to be sponsored? Well, what can you do for that company? How many people can you reach? Why would giving you a product or products or money or whatever, why would they do that? If you attend events, if you have been or have a magazine shoot lined up, if you are um, a vlogger or a blogger, if you have a big audience, the bigger the audience, the more likely most companies are to work with you. How do you go about selling yourself to a company? I mean, you have to be true to yourself first. And if you are going about things the way you want to and the way you would normally, and a company wants to rock with you on that, then that's the best. But the minute you start saying, how do I sell myself to a company? That's where the area starts to get very gray. Because at that point, then you'll start potentially morphing your behaviors or your posting or your whatever in a way that you think they're gonna like, and that's a really thin line, right? Between real and contrived and manipulative and strategic and sometimes those things the gray area there's a very dangerous area to play in. So you need to just be able to do what you want to do with your say your car. And if there are companies that you would like to utilize their product and partner with them, then the parts that you can control would be your presentation. And it kind of just oddly ties right back to how you present yourself, meaning how your grammar, how you type out, how you give them a sponsorship proposal. Is it digital? Is it a PDF? Is it a PowerPoint? Are you printing it out and mailing it into them? Are you just there are people who have emailed multi-million dollar companies. They don't even attach a Word document or an anything, man. They just send them an email like, I go to a lot of events. Can you sponsor me? And none of it's even spelled properly. It's like they text it and you get laughed at and deleted. So how do you present yourself to be attractive? Be a respectful contributing member to the culture. If you don't go to anything but car meets in a parking lot somewhere, you don't go to main events, you don't go to shows, you don't exhibit or vend or just simply attend, why would a company have any reason to care? So, how do you go about making yourself attractive to companies? I think ideally you just do what you do and be who you are and then reach out to them and you'll be true to yourself. And if they so choose to work with you, cool. If you are building a car and the only way to finish it is to get sponsors, then you are already borderline doomed. Because if you can't finish your dream without financial assistance to do it in a time frame that you want to, then you're going to end up being beholden to people and companies that will help you make your dream come true. And that's how corners get cut. That's how part of the vision gets blurred because you can't do it on your own well within the time frame that you say is best. So you, instead of being patient and saving your money or something else like that, you just take what you can get, figuratively and literally. And I'm not a big believer in that type of thinking. All right, let's see. Just here to tell you I miss you. That's adorable. I miss you too. Um, Do people notice that Frankenstein is the scientist who made the monster, not the monster itself? That's a deep question. If you guys don't catch that, do people notice that Frankenstein is the scientist who made the monster, not the monster itself? I don't think people do. To put it simply, I don't think people do. Okay. What first got you into cars? Lowercase b big, lowercase m Mike. Okay. Speaking of that, gotta capitalize, my friend. Okay, what first got you into cars? Growing up in Southern California, it was inevitable, to put it simply. Growing up in Southern California, I was from a very young age just able to see different cars around me, and the import culture and the people in it were people that I was around, and so it was natural that I would get into them. All right, how do you feel about millennials? Well, I think that millennials and the people who get thrown into that title, I think that there's a couple things going on. I think number one, they get a bad rap because if you didn't have good parents and if you have a bunch of nonsense on the internet that's raising you, then you're going to have a certain skewed perspective. You know, the joke about, you can't give people trophies or ribbons or awards for trying. You're going to create a bunch of soft kids or people who think that the world's like a fairy tale place where everything works out. It's 100% true. It's 100% true. Because guess what? There are people who are going to get a 4.0. There are people who are going to get a 3.5, a 3.2, a 3, a 2.7, a 2.5, and there are people who are going to fail everything. Now, the question is, did the people who failed because they studied as hard as they could and that's what happened? No. No. Are the people who got a B minus? Did those people study until they couldn't study anymore and got a B minus? That's what they ended up with. Sure, I'm sure that exists. And then there are the people who get A's. We all know people in school, college, high school, whatever, who got A's and they didn't even study. And then there are people who studied hard and got A's. My point is, people like millennials or the people who get thrown underneath that title, in my humble opinion, there's a part of that that has to be addressed because they have been told that if you tried, here is a trophy. You participated in this event. The person who ran faster, scored more points, the person who out wrestled you, the person who, whatever sport, right? They beat you. But here's an award for simply trying. And then they get to the real world. They become adults. And you go to a job and the job's like, next, right? You send applications to 45 different jobs. Next. And let me not even get into how that might go right back into your grammar. I mean, if you can't even present yourself like an adult, you're never going to get past the bottom of the pile. So anyways, the point is that I feel like millennials have a certain amount of circumstances that have created them to have this idea that everything's gonna be hunky dory, and then you just get out of school and you make a lot of money, and it kind of ties into the whole thing about you get a home with a white picket fence and a golden retriever, and you come home and honey, I'm home, and you have a trophy wife who just baked an apple pie and she's waiting for you. Guess what? That's just not how it works for most people. And millennials and people who get categorized as such are people who have, in my humble opinion, whether it's their fault or the fault of the people around them, I think that they have been convinced that the world is more ideal than it is. In other words, they're soft. They don't have thick skin because the world's not a kind place sometimes. Circumstances are not nice. So they get to a point where they believe that if they try, not even their best, that if they just try, that it'll work out. and the world is going to and has given them extremely hard blows to the face to let them know that that's not how it works. And then they are legitimately, from the way that they have been taught to think, they are legitimately heartbroken and surprised and upset. And then you have the whiny people who start bitching about it and like, oh my God, nothing's working out for me. I don't get it. I tried. I mean, I tried. Okay, those people, good luck in life, man, because you're in your 20s or 30s and you sound like you're 11. But I think that that's actually the minority of people in that category. I think a lot of them just thought legitimately. They were they were taught to think that if they just go show up and try, that it's good enough, and it's absolutely 100% not. Okay? Good enough is never good enough. But they thought that they showed up, they participated, so they're going to get an award because that was taught to them since they were children. No. So, what do I think about millennials? I think that they have some circumstances going against them that make it harder for them. But as any adult, it's up to you to do something about it and change. All right. What is your next build? What is your next project? All right. The next project is the current project, and that is the Think Bigger project. Now, I know you are most likely asking about a car, but my personal build is it's fast, it's fun, it's an amazing car to drive. I have a lot of fun with that, and then being able to build for television, for the Discovery Network, being able to play a role in the smallest of ways, all the way to hands-on with some friends' builds that have done very well for themselves and are very well known as well. Playing any role, even if it's just a phone call, like, hey man, I'm trying to do the symmetry of this turbo setup, the twins, one on each side. And I mean, there's just this one part I want everything to be like a mirror. If you put a mirror down the middle, and well, I mean, you could do this. Yep, I did that already. Oh, okay. Well, what about this line or this wastegate plumbing, or what about this clamp? And oh, well, yeah. Like, well, why don't you just move it here? I mean, you're gonna have to do that. You could do that. I mean, do you want to do that? And they're just like, yeah, that's it. They may never. Nah, I don't know if they even remember that conversation or if they care to remember it or whatever. But seeing that executed on their engine bay or their interior setup or their fuel setup or whatever, and knowing that even if it was just a nudge, a verbal nudge in a direction, they did it. They made it happen with their hands, and I mean, it's gorgeous. And it's not, I didn't create that. They called me, we had a conversation or a DM or a text or whatever, and stuff like that. So, stuff like that, even something as tiny as that, it's fulfilling, to see people reference my build as inspiration. So, for me, the project, as far as automotive and intangible, that's not what I'm doing right now. The Think Bigger project is more important to me, to reach more people, to stimulate thought and growth, to give people a brand and a movement to believe in that actually benefits them. I care more about doing that. And the growth of it is amazing. It's global. I've shipped all over Europe, Asia, Japan, Indonesia, London, Belgium, Canada, South America, Puerto Rico. I mean, it's fantastic. So the movement and the project is growing, and that's what I'm all about right now. Let's see. I admired the 240 build. You went with the SR. Did you ever consider a VQ? And if you did another 240, what would you do? Well, it was a 280. I know it's a subtle difference, but 240, 260, 280. That one was a 280. Yes, I mean, in the context of planning a VQ, an RB, an SR, an LS, even. I mean, each one, time, money, resources, cost effective. How cost effective, time effective. There was a million factors, and a VQ was one of them. But I just chose not to, and I'm extremely happy with the way the SR played out. It keeps the weight balance almost perfectly at 48.52. The weight sits at the front axles, the front suspension backwards, so you keep that balance in that part of the engine bay. There's a fair amount of room to add or create certain things. The only downfall I would say to an SR in a 240, 260, 280 is if you do like a top mount, it puts the turbo and the compressor housing close to the brake booster and master. So if you guys look at the pictures of that Z that was done for television, there is venting that's put on each side of the hood, and it's right above that area to let heat rise and exit when you are staging or idling or just sitting in one place. And if there was more time, then a physical heat shield with gold reflective film, some coatings on the compressor housing and downpipe and things like that, combined with the ventilation, would have been you know what those last few things I would have liked to have done. But a lot of people have absolutely no idea of the circumstances and how it all works. So everyone's going to be like, "Oh, it didn't do this, didn't do that," but they don't know, so they can judge all they want. But no brake fluid boiled, no master has been damaged from the heat because there was spacing, there was ventilation, and combined with a physical heat shield and or coatings, it's fine. And it's been done before and will be done after. So VQ is a great motor, paired up with a good transmission, and you have certain drive-by-wire capabilities and spacing in different ways. So um, if I did another one, what engine would I choose? I'm a big fan of the SR. I don't care what anyone says. 99% of the people who are like, SR is whack, use an RB, they can't afford to do either one. And they're just, mouthing off. To do an RB properly, to do an RB in a Z properly, the way I do engine bays. Look at any of the engine bay setups I've been a part of. It's not just about putting the motor in there. There is spacing and plumbing, arrangement, symmetry, etc. And then you combine that with time and how much money you have or don't have. An RB is not something that you do without time and money. So I would do an SR again for a personal build, and I love the RV, and I would definitely do that, but it takes more time and more money to be done properly. So we'll see what happens in the future. How much weights can you bench press? How much weights? How much weight? Let's go with that. Can you bench press? You know what? I don't try to max anymore. When I was younger, it was always a thing to be in the 3 plate club. I wanted a free squat, back squat 3 plates and up. I wanted to deadlift 3 plates and up and bench, and get my total to be over 1,000. For the big three. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, just basic like powerlifting stuff, and I'm a heavy guy, so you have to be able to move way more weight if you ever want to compete or something. At my weight, I'd be going up against absolute monsters. So, I never trained to compete. It was just personal stuff because I hung around a lot of bodybuilders, power lifters, and even CrossFit, guys. And I have friends who played D1 basketball, and one of my boys is just signed a small NBA contract, and I've played basketball my whole life, and so weight training and stuff like that is something that's very real and a part of me. So when I was younger, I was into that. So the most I've ever done, was just unrack 315. I just took 3 plates, and I just had someone film me, and I unracked, got a rep, and re-racked it. So I mean, with a spotter, I feel like I could have got two and then fought for the third one. And obviously, if you do that every few days or once a week for a few months, I mean, you'll do 315 for two or three, and then you can do 325, 335, three, blah, blah, blah. So for me, I can't say I could have. I can only say what I have done. So I have done 315, no spotter, just unrack, press, and re-rack. So there's that. How do you organize your thoughts before you decide to start a new build? I do it the old school way, man. I actually have a video on my Instagram where I touched on this and it pissed off a bunch of people relatively, where I said, do it the old school way. Write it down on a piece of paper. Take every single part that you need. Man, you can have Excel, you could have Microsoft Word, whatever you want to do it on. And I think people miss the point. The point is, take every single part that you need to create your build, okay? Write it down or data entry it into your computer if you are that stuck on that. Okay, now once you have the list of everything that you need, price it out. Every single thing. And then you have a very real understanding when you see the total. You have a very real understanding of where you are and how much it's going to cost, how long it'll take you to do it, and you can prioritize from that point. Okay. So I do it that way. I organize it physically in front of me on paper. And if you guys look at, some photos on my Instagram of when I did my build in 2016 and the current version, there are parts laid out and, bolts, nuts, hardware, washers, gold zinced, tumbled brackets, D clamps, you name it. It's all laid out. And it's laid out because it was designed on paper, disassembled, laid out once, sent off to be tumbled and media blasted, powder coated, anodized, heat treated, etc. Brought back, laid out, reassembled, etc. So organization is key. Write it down, label it right in front of you. That's what I say. Um, all right. When did you start growing that majestic beard? You know what, man? I've had some form of facial hair or a beard, whatever, to some degree, some length, some volume, some shape for a very long time. So I didn't decide one day to just grow a beard and then therefore having the ability to tell you when I started. It's just been the thing I've had like the Pringles Monopoly Man mustache. I've had goatees. I've had lineups. I've had a few different things, and then for years I'll just be clean shaven. And it's kind of a thing. Like I don't really pay attention. One day I'll just be like, okay, and I'll have a beard. It doesn't take more than a few days to come in, and within a few weeks, it's a thing. So I don't know. Let's see. If you see a lot of interest, will you be willing to mass produce any part that you custom made for your build? For example, your custom wide body front fenders. Well, to answer the question, would I be willing to produce them, mass produce them for people? Yes, I'd be willing. But the second part to that is there has been a lot of interest. And when it comes down to actually doing it and then the price it costs, the same people who are just like, make it, make it, make it, they don't want to do it. I mean, the Prelude community, anyone in the Prelude community who is hearing this, you're either gonna like what I'm saying or you're gonna dislike it. But the Prelude community is predominantly a bunch of people who complain about cost. They complain how there aren't parts for Preludes, and then when a company or a person goes about trying to make something for them, they complain that it's expensive. So I don't have the ability to help someone who does nothing but complain. Okay. I don't care if it's because of your age. I don't care if it's because of your financial situation. The point is if you want something and you can't make it yourself, then guess what? The person who's investing the time and the money to make it, they're doing all of that and you want it to be cheap. Well, good luck. And that's why the Prelude community still struggles for parts and still searches out old Japanese parts because of the rarity and how good they look. But it's also because anyone who wants to make something new, they don't get the support of the community they're making it for. And that's the reality of it. Um, do you have a hobby? Uh, well, I mean, I consider the automotive world much, much more than a hobby. So let's assume that that's not what they're talking about. Basketball. I played basketball my whole life, but as I briefly mentioned before, there are some injuries, some minor and some major, very bad injuries that have happened from life, and then some from training and basketball and weightlifting and stuff that has prevented me from playing like I used to. Um, I guess you could call that a hobby. I used to shoot pool. I used to be pretty good at pool actually, but like anything, if you don't practice it, it's just a skill that you have to hone. Um, but basketball, like shooting, like I'll play anybody in a game of like I don't know, like any 3-point shooting game you want. Anyone. I'll play my D1 friends. I'll play my homie who's in the NBA. Like he can dunk and windmill on me, and he probably break my ankles if he wanted to give me the handles. But I'll go up against anyone in a 3-point shooting contest, straight up. Um, but I mean, if that's a hobby, there you go. Weight training. I mean, the gym is an outlet for me. Yo, can you get me a pass for SEMA? No, no, I cannot. What's the next car you plan on building? I have about 5 different builds that I would like to do, but right now I am dedicating my time and the money needed to invest in the Think Bigger project. I care about that far more than a vehicle build. I have had the honor and a blessing to have my builds be embraced by the global community and to become a representative for the import community to the biggest names in the industry. And that responsibility is far more important to me and takes far more effort than I'm willing to sacrifice to put into another vehicle build right now. So, do you prefer cars based on reputation or which is actually better? I don't understand that question. Do you prefer cars based on reputation or which is actually better? Are you after a car that you actually enjoy driving or one that will make everyone think you're a baller? I have never purchased or want to purchase a car that will quote unquote make everyone think I'm a baller. I don't. For example, Italian cars, Lamborghinis, Ferraris, they are incredible for very obvious reasons. I do not have an inclination to buy an Aventador, a Huracan, a Ferrari. I don't have any inclination, okay? I don't care about them. They look amazing, they sound amazing, but they do absolutely nothing. They do not impress me. They are one of the highest depreciating vehicles on the planet. You got people who buy a 3 or 4 year old Aventador or Huracan for, you know, 60,000, 80,000 bucks, and people who have no idea what they're looking at think that it's a $250,000 car, and it might have actually been that, but they depreciate instantly. But whatever, the point is that anyone who gets in one, it's going to look incredible. I don't care about them. They don't do anything for me as far as Italian type supercars. So driving one that will make everyone think I'm a baller. I have had 4 different Civics, um, 2 Preludes, and a Honda Accord. So clearly, I'm not going about trying to buy anything that makes people think I'm a baller. Okay, I've got a 92 SI Prelude that I want to restore, then make my own. Nothing crazy. I have no clue where to start. Oh, well, you said you want to restore it, right? So start there. Get all of the parts that can't be made, if they're still available, that is. But the parts, the aftermarket parts will theoretically always be there. But you want to restore it? Start there then. Oh, do you get stoned AF sometimes? No, no, I do not. I do not smoke weed. I do not. I don't use any drugs. I just don't. Um. All right. Let's see. It just doesn't do anything for me. I don't have an appeal. It doesn't appeal to me. What's your private life like? It's private. There you go. How come you never call me to go to lunch? Okay, fair enough. How come you never call me to go to lunch? Let's go ahead and argue about that. How do you feel about unanswered text messages? Well, if you don't have the ability to prioritize the completely useless conversations that you have via text, and prioritize them with the ones that actually have subject matter that matters to people that care about you and are not just trying to. Anyways, how do I feel about them? Well, if you don't answer them, then clearly the conversation isn't important enough. So then that answers that. What would you like to see in S chassis builds that you haven't lately? I would just like to see more well done ones. The S chassis is like a Civic. It's You're gonna find this smaller percentage of upper echelon, just gorgeous S chassis builds, and then the high majority of them are a bunch of buckets, and they're a bunch of buckets of people who get mad when you call their cars buckets. I would just like to see them more well done. What's the biggest thing about the scene that annoys you? Man, whew, the biggest thing about the scene that annoys me. There's a few different things, but it's really just the divisiveness. It's the subcategories, the breakdown of cliques. People who don't associate with each other, don't help each other, they hate on each other. Let's go with that. Um, wow. Okay, so some of these are essentially the same as others. Um, all right, let's see. Let's keep going. Where do you draw most of your inspiration from for your builds? Um, I start I started with magazines. I'm a little bit older, so magazines and then forums and blogs and vlogs and Japanese magazines and shows and events that I would attend, all of it, and then as I became a more well-rounded and open-minded adult, off-road, trophy trucks, sand rails, drag cars, time attack cars, hot rods, low riders, it doesn't matter. Anything would provide some glimmer of inspiration that I would end up applying. What was the hardest part of my build? What was your initial goal? The hardest part of the build was getting it done. It takes a certain amount of fortitude. It takes balls, man, testicular fortitude and dedication and a work ethic. All this stuff about passion, passion doesn't mean a damn thing without work ethic. It doesn't mean anything. I don't care how passionate you are. You can passionately type away on a computer. You can passionately watch other people live their life on vlogs. You can passionately do a lot of things, but if you don't channel that into your hands and getting something done, it doesn't mean anything. The hardest part was getting it done, setting a deadline and a timeline that came to the point where without people helping me, like my boy Ryan from Rywire and my dude Dan from WordWorks and Cody from Casal Design and a few other people, with those people not coming in to help, at least in the context of the deadline that I gave myself in 2016. If they didn't do that, it would not, straight up, it would not have gotten done. But I'm talking sleeping 2 to 3 hours a night. I'm talking working and then driving an hour, wrenching until I can't anymore. And then Ryan and I just looking at each other, just done. And I would drive an hour home and he would drive, a shorter distance home just so that we could get up in 3, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours maybe after working for 16 or 18 of the last 24 to get up and do it all over again. So without Ryan from Rywire, um, specifically, and Cody and Dan and a few other people, it just it takes all of you to build something that major for that major of a debut. And the hardest part was nothing dramatic. It's nothing philosophical. The hardest part was getting it done. The physical labor, the what it did to my body. Um, and the initial goal, the car has many goals. It's not just one, but one of them was to go up against the best cars in the world, to debut in a place where it can be presented next to the best builds of any type in the world, and to shatter the stereotypes that exist outside of the automotive community. The import world that we are in is a thriving culture and bubble. And the goal of that build was to go up against the best, and it had nothing to do with placing or winning at the Battle of the Builders or anything. What it had to do was sitting there in Central Hall in the midst of some of the best in the world, and having people come over and say, I didn't even know that people could build a Japanese car like this. I didn't know people could build Hondas like this. I didn't know that these guys could do cars like this, who got inspiration from hot rods and who got inspiration from race cars and trophy trucks, and and then make it happen in one place. And that's exactly what the car did then and continues to do now, and why I believe the biggest publications ended up using it for the cover of their magazines. And that's why it sent waves across the world, because the passion and drive and focus and dedication, creativity, innovation, and dedication, it was right there in front of them, and done in a way that they could not allow themselves to look it over and walk away. So I'm very deeply blessed and grateful. Um, what was the most aggravating moment and the most enjoyable moment? The most enjoyable moment was firing it up and driving it, which there's 10 stories behind that. But what was the most aggravating moment? I don't have just one. There were so many setbacks. There were so many things that happened that just almost broke me. But you just have to man up and keep going. Wow, that's not even half the questions. But okay, let's we're gonna have to do another episode. We're gonna do another episode on this, but let's take just a few more here. There are a ton of them. All right, let's see. When are you going to have me on the podcast so we can talk race cars? Soon, my friend. You guys, there are world class builders, shop owners, innovators, designers, and enthusiasts from small to large that are going to be on this podcast. And this gentleman right here built a car that, if I say the car, you guys will know, but I want to wait. There's a car, it made a lot of waves when it debuted, and it's making more and more and more right now. So I'll have you on soon, my friend, very soon. We talked about this months ago, so you're very high up on the list. So, um, do you think America has become soft in needing to be politically correct? Oh, yes, I do. I think people are so worried about saying something that offends someone, even if it's one person out of a million, that everyone starts speaking in these like disclaimer prefaced, you know, gray tones. Nobody feels comfortable stating their perspective if it's not part of the status quo, if it's not popular, because someone's going to be offended. And I think people need to just relax, man. There are certain subjects, there are certain things that are deep rooted and they're very deep and profound. And it's not that simple to just bypass them. But at the same time, not everyone's going to believe the way you believe. And you can, in a mature fashion, both of you can agree to disagree. You do not have to hate each other, fight each other, disrespect each other. People are not going to believe the same thing politically, theologically, religiously, culturally. And that's what makes diversity. Okay. But anytime you see a movement for equal rights or equality, it never ends up being about that. It always ends up being worse than that. It's like you don't want to be equal. You want someone who doesn't believe the way you believe to not even be able to say that they don't believe that, which is ironic because in the beginning you just wanted to be treated as an equal, and it's become this crazy convoluted, tense subject. And you can apply what I just said to a whole bunch of things. But now the original people who you were wanting equality from, they can't even say how they feel because it's offensive. And that's not okay. We all need to be able to be and who we are, be who we are and say how we feel. And if that offends somebody, it's okay to say something that someone else doesn't like, but now everyone's walking on eggshells and nobody wants to speak. And I'm not with that at all. That question alone could be an entire episode. But you guys look, I have enough based on how that went, giving each question a fair amount of time, and not just brushing over it really quickly. I realized we're gonna need to do another episode on that. So yes, to touch back on a couple of things, I have many guests that are going to be extremely interesting people for you guys to hear the conversation, to understand how they got to be who they are and where they are based on their thought process, and who inspired them, what they do, what they plan to do, what the future of this industry and other industries is. And then I'm excited. I'm excited for the growth of the podcast, where our views and listens are in the thousands because of you guys. I appreciate you, the messages you guys send, the length of those messages makes me understand that it stimulates so much thought. And I'm appreciative of the kind words, the people that say, I thought it was just going to be about cars, and it's actually so much bigger than that. And I appreciate them taking the time to listen and allow that to sink in. So, once again, you guys, Think Bigger Podcast is a branch of the Think Bigger Project. ThinkBiggerProject.com. It's home base. YouTube channels on there. Merch is there. Support the podcast. Support the project. It is 100% funded by you. It is 100%. All of the proceeds, 100% of them go back into the project. They do not go into my pocket. It is not about that. It is about the growth of the movement and the brand and the podcast and stimulating forward progression. All right, you guys. I appreciate you. Go to the website, my Instagram, the Big Mike, TheBigMike. Communicate with me there, and we will keep the movement going. Okay. I appreciate y'all. God bless you.